I work for the Department of Natural Resources. I'm a geologist. Been doing the Envirothon since, well, I've been putting the test together since 1999. Took over for Steve Gull when he became my supervisor. He's since retired. Contact information is right there. I've also got it later on. But the test I put together it can be divided into 4 different areas: Nebraska government, legislation, current issues, geography, land use, and Nebraska history. And the objectives, one is to understand the role of local, state, federal agencies implementing what they do, and understand development, their conservation practices that they promote, the research, collection, storage of natural resources data, provide education, technical support, and developing and enforcing regulations. Second objective, describe Nebraska geography, policies regarding land ownership, water rights, crop types, irrigation use, things like that, agricultural use and crop production environment. Problems and opportunities, place names, major rivers, lakes, geographic regions are included, function-specific rivers, lakes, along with their historical significance, and no history of natural resources in Nebraska. Oops. Next one. Yes?
Is this all on the website then, for your part?
Yeah, there is a policy, or under the policy, let me see, it's an NRD's website. There's the study guides and policy, and some of the links are outdated, unfortunately, but you can Google them and find them that way. But the information, pretty much what I put up here, I took from there. So
can we get a copy of this?
Sure, yeah. That should be no problem. Mm-hmm. Third objective, up-to-date knowledge of the following: current land water use laws, historical significance, the natural resources of the laws. Historical figures are included in there, the importance of their role in conservation, natural resources. Plants and animals protected by the Endangered Species Act, function of wetlands and policies that are regarding their regulation, production, regulatory use, regulatory issues, excuse me. Right there on the bottom, that's the source of where these objectives came from, which I probably wrote years ago. This is the way the test appears. This is actually last year's regional test. It'd be page 1 of 5, and if it was a state test, which has twice the number of questions, it would be the first of 10, which is basically a multiple choice, or back when I was in college, we called that multiple guess, but it's made up of regional, which you'll be administrating pretty soon, will be, or we'll be studying for, will be 25 questions, and the state is 50. And all the questions that are on the regional test will be on the state test. So the kids will see those questions twice. It's just, yeah, it's not the easiest test, so it does give them a little bit of advantage if they can see the questions again. And certainly, I don't believe that you learn things by just getting stuff thrown at you and not, not being able to figure out the answers and such. Basically, my test is pretty simple as far as administrating it, the administration of it. The kids, they get a clipboard and the test itself and go their separate ways, separate. And this was actually taken at Halsey. We used to go to Halsey about every other year. And this was taken in a little playground area there. That's my favorite spot. I always like to pick that because it's easy for them to do the test from there. The last 3 questions on the test, I have started including a map. Now the maps don't really require any prior knowledge of this. I mean, they can go to the Natural Resources, Department of Natural Resources website and look at the stuff if they want to. But really the purpose of the maps is just basically test their map reading skills and their ability to follow directions. Or actually 4 maps, but 3 of them associated with questions. There's restrictions, surface water appropriations, hydraulic connected area. Then there's one fully appropriated surface water areas. And I used to put these maps together for the publication that we put out every year. And I still put the maps together, but I don't really do these anymore. There is a 4th map, which does not have any specific questions associated with it. It is just information. Some years back, my dad, who just recently passed away, when I was talking to him about traveling across the state and such, and I was telling him I was heading out to the Panhandle. Well, my dad farmed in eastern Nebraska most of his life, and he scratched his head. He wasn't sure what I meant by the Panhandle. He'd never heard western Nebraska referred to as the Panhandle for some reason, and it got me thinking. There's I know Nebraska geography as well as the geology inside and out. I mean, I've worked for the DNR or the state Natural Resources Commission as well as now the Department of Natural Resources for going on 27 years at the end of May, and most of that time's been working with maps, putting maps together and things like that. And so I know geography so well, and I have to remember not everybody knows geography as well as I do. So I gave us maps. I give them a little bit of an extra reference in case they don't know where the Niobrara River is. They can find it and where the sand hills are. And it's right there on the map in case they should need it. I was able to put last year's test up because I do keep a questions database. And this is one of 2 sheets that I have. I think this is the, let me see, what is, oh yes, this is geography and, no, I can't read that. History, okay. And then there's a government legislation sheet as well. And I kind of split the test into those 2 halves. But I try to rotate the questions about every 2 to 3 years. Almost never will I use one question 2 years in a row. I mean, it can happen with the last 3 questions with the maps because I only have 6 questions, I think, between those 3. Oh wait, no, 9 actually, because I have 3 questions for each map that I will rotate. But as a general rule, I do cycle them every 2 to 3 years, and every so often I'll change questions out if it's old, outdated, just doesn't really work anymore, or if it's just something that I think. Every so often I find when I just, the kids aren't going to get that. It's just too tough. It's just not fair having something that I don't have a good resource for it that they can look it up. So I throw those out and replace it with something else. And I do add questions periodically. If something new comes up or something interesting I find, I can add that in. Useful study exercises. Contact representatives from your NRD and discuss policies and effects, what they do, and maybe some of the other NRDs as well. Discuss local environmental problems, policies, and the role of the state government, state, local, and federal government in regards to natural resources. Check out the state's rules and regulatory history on our home website. Mainly, I like to emphasize this because it does have the water rights and responsibilities in it. And I was reading a letter to the editor, I believe it was, or maybe it was Facebook somewhere, where someone was talking about that they own that water on their land. Well, they don't. Any water, any groundwater is owned by the state or by the public. It's not owned by the landowner. The landowner, of course, will can apply for a permit to pump the water or to bring in from streams, but they do not own that water. So someone was very well misinformed. Clip out newspaper, magazine articles. Keep a scrapbook. Sometimes I'll stick in anything relating to anything that's new that comes up. Such as, I think I still have questions regarding the Kansas lawsuit, which fortunately has been settled. There's still issues going on. My department is up to their armpits in working with that. And our director is always they do meet with the Colorado and Kansas officials periodically on that. So it's an ongoing thing, even though the lawsuit is fortunately done. Omaha World Herald, the Journal Star, any other magazine, newspapers, local ones might have information. Magazines, Nebraska Farmer, Nebraska Land might have interesting articles. And of course, government agencies and private organizations have their own websites, and they have information on there. I'm familiar with the basic roles of each of the federal and state agencies, as well as the NRDs. And of course, if they can pick up any brochures, that could be helpful information too. Probably a little easier than poking around on websites. The agencies included Bureau of Land Management, and they do have a facts page, which does include good information. Bureau of Reclamation, same thing. They also have a projects page, which they can click around Nebraska and you see the different projects that they have done. The EPA, of course, the NRCS, Corps of Engineers, and of course the USGS. The state agencies, Department of Ag, the DEQ, HHS, of course, handles public water and any public health issues. Of course, DNR, of course, a good source of some information. The Natural Resources Task Force, which is associated with us, but they do have a sustainability fund that I believe might have some questions associated with. University of Nebraska, of course, the CSD that serves as our Geological Society here in Nebraska, and the Water Center as well as information. And of course, the local governments, the Natural Resources District, the National Association of Resource Districts as well as the NRDs themselves. I think that's it. Questions? Yes?
It's been a few years since my school's participated in the Envirothon. Mm-hmm. Do they still take the test as a team test? You said the kids divide up in...
Yeah, it is team. Yeah, it's by teams. Now, when they do the rotation, they usually have two teams in one traveling together in the rotation. But I just split the two teams split up as far as possible, so they're not listening in on each other. That way, nobody's given away, because they are discussing the tests, of course. And so you don't want it within earshot if possible. Yes?
Those last 2 or 3 slides, is that just to cover any general questions?
Yes, yeah, they're just general information, and there are questions associated with a lot of those agencies, what they do, and some of the roles they play.